Hello, in this second video of this bite-sized comms course that will help you with planning your communication strategy for 2024, we're going to be looking at reporting your communications impact. I remember a year ago, someone reached out to me and said, look, my board, they keep questioning the contribution communications is making to the bottom line. I don't even know what to say. They're probing this and probing that. And I had to talk her through how she needed to be reporting. Obviously, it was late at the time we were having this conversation because certain things were not tracked throughout the duration of the year. So it was very difficult to articulate the actual value, but I still told her what to do. And what I want to do with this video is to show you how you should be reporting. I'm going to start with talking you through the metrics you should be looking at. I'm going to use an example to show how you need to be communicating your results. And then for those of you that haven't started tracking, that you've not started getting your baseline figures, I'll tell you what to do, because obviously if you didn't get baseline figures at the beginning of the year, it's going to be hard now to prove growth and all of that, but it's not the end of the world. So we're going to just discuss that, and I hope that you'll find that valuable as you're putting together your reports for the year, and then you bear it in mind for next year so that you know that by fire and by force, you have to get your baseline figures, you have to track, you have to measure, so that at the end of the year, you can clearly state how much comms contributed to the bottom line. Okay, now let's talk about reporting your communications impact. And this is going to be very, very important to show the value that you're adding if you want them to increase your budget, but really just to show that you are being strategic in the work that you're doing, you're measuring, and you are contributing value to the organization as well. So what should you focus on? In the first video, we talked about the 3 things you need to look at when you're assessing your activities for the year. And the last thing that I mentioned was your milestones. And in your reporting, you need to start with the milestones that you achieved. In the next slide, I'm going to show you a practical example of how this will play out. But you need to look at the milestones that you achieve, especially in the context of what the organization set out to achieve this year. You need to think about numbers. I know sometimes we don't like numbers, but please let numbers be your best friend. You need to be able to state the numbers. You need to be able to state growth. You need to be able to state how the things that you did, yes, you spent $1,000 on a particular activity, but what was the return on investment? And yes, communications can actually articulate either return on investment or return on objectives. The next thing is to track and state quantifiable results. Don't just say you gain followers. What did that do? What was the impact of that? How do you quantify it? How much followers? How many percentage? By what time frame are you looking at this result? What did that eventually lead to? What was the percentage leads generated? What was the conversion? You can see why, again, being able to have your baseline data is going to be very, very important, because that's how you can show that, okay, there was an increase, there was growth in a particular area. So when you're reporting, don't just give general things. Don't just say we did an event, 1,000 people came. That's fantastic. Well done. Beyond that, what happened? So the 1,000 people came. What did that do to our brand reputation? What did that do in terms of brand awareness? What did that do in terms of loyalty, understanding the products and service that we offer as an organization? You need to think that way. And finally, you need to link to your organizational goals for the year. So the results that you achieved, for example, if you say there was an increase in engagement, how does that tie into the goal that your organization wanted to achieve for the year? So if your organization, for example, wanted visibility in East Africa, you did an event, you did targeted campaigns that brought about engagement, increase in share of voice, you need to be able to tie those activities to the end result, because that's really where the strategic thinking comes in, or the strategic results come in, is to say we did this and this is how it aligns with what the organization set out to achieve in this year. Now let's look at an example of how this will play out in reality. So this example, you're working for a real estate company that sells family apartments and corporate units for office rental. and what you want to measure is contribution to sales of housing units. There are many metrics that you can measure, but this is just as an example. So at the end of the year, you want to show how the activities that you did contributed to the sale of property or housing units. And this is particularly important for real estate companies. At the end of the day, they want to be making sales. So you can't just say, comms doesn't bring sales. You must be able to show, and you can see I wrote it there, percentage contribution, because there is actually a salesperson that will do all the closing. But you as the comms person, you can facilitate certain things. So let's look at how you're going to report on your activity. So the first thing is that you state the status quo before your communications activity. Remember when I said baseline figures, you need to know where are we now? What are the numbers? How many property were we selling? What's kind of clients were we attracting? All of those things, you need your baseline figures. Again, please watch my bite-sized comms course on strategic communications. There's a measurements video there. Please watch it so that you know exactly the kind of things you need to be tracking or the kind of metrics that you will need, especially with regards to your baseline figures. The next thing is to state what your communications activity was. For your strategy, you could have done a stakeholder event, you could have done a social media campaign, whatever it is that you did, state it there. Then what were the immediate results? So if you did a webinar, for example, so for a real estate company, you can decide to do a webinar with your high net worth clients to showcase new offerings. So from the webinar, for example, maybe a call to action was, sign up to receive a call from the agent to do an open house. How many people indicated they were interested in the open house? How many people actually came for the open house? So you need to be able to state those immediate results. Then you state any follow-up activities that you may have done. There's an example that will bring this to life. So you do the webinar, you have the open house. What did you do after that? Did you send newsletters? Did you send reminders? Did you send targeted emails? What did you do? And then what was the overall result and the time frame as well of that result? So this is why you need to be tracking. And this thing is like you almost like have a spreadsheet where you're tracking the numbers. You're calling salespeople. What are the numbers? Where are we today? So you can't afford to work in a silo as a comms person, because you need the other departments to feed you information and data that you will need. You don't wait till the end of the year to now say, okay, sales, how much did we make? How many or how many properties did we sell? And knowing an organization like a real estate company, salespeople, there's commission, right? So they don't even want to share their commission with you. So you need to be very, very strategic about this. But let's look at how this plays out in real life. Okay, so we're still on the real estate company. What was the status quo pre the comms activity? So for this company, they were selling an average of 5 apartment units per month, and that's useful information to know. And then they were selling majorly to individual HNIs, but there was low sales of office and commercial units. And again, if you've watched any of my previous videos on YouTube, I talk about communication opportunity. There's an opportunity here to say, how can we leverage communications to grow sales of office and commercial units? What can we do as a communications team to increase the sales from 5 apartments to 10 apartments per month? There are things that we can do to contribute to that. So you've done your strategy and all of that, and the communications activity you've done here is to have the open house event for individual HNIs and the MDs of corporate organizations. So maybe previously the focus was really on cold calling or just targeting HNIs, but you're like, let's invite the MDs as well of the corporate organization so they can see our offering. And then the call to action is maybe you have a private website or a landing page where they can sign up and indicate their interest in the offering, or they can also give you further information of what it is that they want, whether they're looking for investment property, if they're looking for the commercial units, what are they looking out for? So that can be your call to action, for example. And then you go to the immediate results. So let's say after this open house, or from this open house, you had 75 website signups, and then there was a 100% increase in weekly calls to learn more about the property and offerings. And you must be able to tie this together. So, they're not going to be calling you. They're going to be calling the salespeople. So immediately after the event, you need to be asking, and something that you can track as a baseline figure, how many calls weekly did you used to get? So that after the event, you're measuring how many calls did you get this week? Then week 2, how many calls did you get? So you can see, okay, we did this activity, there was this interest. And then another thing that you can do if you want to get really granular in this example, looking at the names of the people that signed up, get the call log and see the names of the people, the companies that made the phone calls. Another thing that you can then do is that ask the salespeople, if someone calls, for example, how did you hear about us, or who referred us to you? Note that person's name and go and check the list for the event. Was this somebody that attended the event? That's a linkage right there. It's a lot more work, but it helps you really to show your value, because there's a lot of value that you're definitely adding in your work, but because you're not tracking, you're not paying attention to these little details, some other person is taking the glory for the hard work that you're doing. So there's so many ways that you can go down to get a lot of data on this. And then maybe an immediate result, 60% increase in referral. So over the phone, for example, or somebody sends an email or reaches out to say, oh, this person mentioned this. And you have to be deliberate about asking people, where did you find out about this? How did you hear about us? Or how did you hear about this offering? And then maybe the media mentions and the features have increased. That could also have contributed. So the awareness, for example, for media mentions can contribute to the increase in signups, can contribute to the increase in weekly calls. So you can see the linkages. So let's say from there you decided to do follow-up, but because you can't just do one comms activity and say, okay guys, we have 75 website signups, weekly calls has increased, we have increased referrals. Remember, in the context of this company, they want to sell apartment units, they want to sell property. All of this interest does not yet mean anything until a sale is actually done. These are good results, but at the end of the day, they want to know how many properties were sold and how much came in. So you can't just leave it there. So for example, maybe a follow-up activity after people have signed up, they've called, you know what they need, you know their interest, and then you send a bespoke offer suited to each potential client, and you decide to do it in this customized e-magazine templates, or you do a virtual showcase of available properties on a private landing page. So it's a virtual tour, 3D virtual tour that they can see real time, or they can see like real life, maybe AI, who knows what the property looks like. They can almost imagine themselves in it. And then another call to action to register the interest in purchase or interest in actually moving forward with the transaction and all of that. And then when you do that, again, you can still see how you need to be linking with people in sales. If there's a separate call center, you need to be linking with them to see, okay, now that we've sent this newsletter, what was the response? How many people have actually, signed a deal or come on board as clients? You need to be able to ask these questions. By asking these questions, you'll be able to get the relevant data that you need. So don't expect that people in sales are going to be tracking these things for you. They have different deliverables, right? And then you're looking at the overall results and time frame. So you want to look at increase of monthly apartment sales. So maybe in this example that we're using, let's say there was an increase of apartment sales by 200%. So you can say how much comms contributed to that. So remember at the very beginning, this organization was selling an average of 5 apartment units per month. So if there has now been a 200% increase, that means you can then say X percentage was contributed by the communications activity, or X percentage was linked to the communications activity. And there are ways to prove this. This is not you pulling out numbers from thin air. You can actually measure it, because again, you're tracking and you're getting the data. Another thing is maybe you have an increase in individual HNI pool by 500%. So at the beginning, you've measured how many HNI clients do we have, and let's say over the period of, and this can be a 6-month period, it can be a 1-year period, you track month on month, and you're saying, okay, we're getting a bigger pool of HNIs thanks to our communications activity, and by how many percent you contributed to that. Sales of 5 office units within 6 months of the private open house, you can also attribute to your communications activity, especially if it's to the company. Remember, we invited MDs of corporate organizations, so maybe those 5 are from those people that attended the open house, or maybe it was from the bespoke offer that you did, but you must again be able to check. So with each activity, you're looking at what's changed, what's remaining the same, what is communications making an impact on, what you're looking at, what metric is shifting as you're doing and implementing your communications activity. And then you want to look at income. So this organization, by virtue of the increase in apartment sales and the 5 office units, maybe this organization made $600,000. But you can say, knowing the amount that comms contributed to, you can say that you contributed $100,000 to the organization's income. There are ways to go about this, like to break it down to the, actual figures. figures, right? And then maybe, for example, you did something that saved the organization $45,000 through a targeted comms activity. Remember that I said it's not just about making money. Saving money is also an important part of the equation that you need to state. So maybe you created an FAQ site that people could go. So that saved call center time. People were not calling to ask a question. They could easily go on the website, or you did some sort of product that gave people a better understanding of the product and services, or you did something internally. I don't know. It can be anything, but whatever you did that saved money, please make sure that you put it in your results. So I hope that this example really just brings to life how you need to be thinking about tracking your results. Now, you can be saying to me now, "Are you doing? I didn't track. I don't have baseline data. What am I going to do?" I think, first of all, you now have this information and knowledge. Make sure you put it in place for 2024. How do we salvage now 2023? Still look at your communications activity, whatever it is that you did this year. Try to tie in the results to what your organization wants to achieve. So as you're articulating that, okay, we got an increase in followers, we got an increase in awareness, we got an increase in XYZ, how does that tie or align with what your organization wanted to achieve for 2023? That's the best thing that I can say for that kind of scenario, where you may not be able to specifically say we contributed 200% or 500% because you were not tracking. But please, going forward, make sure that you are tracking, make sure that you are getting baseline figures, and very importantly, make sure that you are communicating your results in the context of what your organization wants to achieve and what's important to your directors, to the board, to your senior leaders. And then this is how to track your metrics. You want to do it month on month. You're looking every month, what is growing, what is shifting, what is changing. You want to look quarter on quarter. So each quarter, Q1 of this year, Q2 of this year, was there growth? Was there a reduction? Were things just the same? And then you want to look on year. So this time frame, compare it with 2022. What is the shift? What is the change? What is the increase? And make sure that you use this time to also begin to collate the important data that you would need to track future activities. And this is going to be especially important if you haven't been collecting any kind of baseline data. So make sure you use this time to collect what figures, where are you now, what's the snapshot of where the organization is right now, so that as you go into 2024, you can then begin to measure and track, okay, we're doing this, how is this shifting, how is this changing, what impact are we making to the organization, so that they can clearly see that communications is a very, very valuable function. So thank you very much for watching. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to gather insights for your communication strategy. There's a lot of predictions going on, what to expect in 2024. I mean, you can't put all of those predictions, right? But you can get important insights. Insights will come from within your organization. Insights will come from the external environment. And then from there, you can see, okay, based on these insights, based on what's important to my organization, based on what's important to our senior leaders, this is a strategy that will help us to achieve it. Thank you for watching.